Welcome to another Epic Cycles unboxing video. On this video, we're going to be covering the Intense, and this is going to be the Intense Tazer MX Pro in carbon. The carbon frame and a couple other goodies. It's going to have the Olin suspension on it and a bunch of other things that we're going to start to see just as we unbox this bike from it. So here we go. As you can see, nice tough box. Make sure your bike, it's going to make sure that your bike arrives nice and safe. One thing the Intense Tazer comes with, or all Intense bikes will come with, it's going to come with your accessory group. This one box, I believe, will have your charger in it. Here's our toolkit. So each one of your Intense bikes comes with a full toolkit. Comes in a nice bag. Everything you need is in this kit. So in this kit will be included, number one, I'm going to mention, to do a quality job, a torque wrench. It's marked Intense too. It gives you a range of values there of torques in Newton meters. You've got all of your bits, so you've got Allen key bits, you've got torque bits, you've even got some Phillips screwdrivers and a flat screwdriver. To take care of your suspension, you have a shock pump. So this shock pump will go from 0 to 400 pounds. I'm pretty sure we're going to be into the 1 to 300 range on this one. It's a nicely designed pump. You got a little bleeder valve to fine tune the pressure. You got your small pump that gives you small injections of pressure, and a nice palm pad so that you're not hurting yourself while you're ramming that pressure in there. Also included, and this we won't install this in the video, but tire plasma as they call it, or essentially a tire sealant. So this is going to make your tubeless tires flat resistant, hopefully maybe even flat proof. Each bottle will do one tire. In the case of this, they use this for other bikes. 2 gravel tires, i.e. the little tiny 700C tires. That doesn't count in this video today, but that's something that you can put in there to make your tires, or hold your tires up a little bit better. And of course, you got your basic 3-way Allen key, 4, 5, and 6 millimeter Allen keys. All the handy dandy tools you need. A little extender there for your torque wrench as well if you find it necessary. So everything you need right here in the package. Very, very detailed. There's something called a quick start guide here. And I haven't even read this yet, but I'm pretty sure it's just going to give you a couple of Cole's notes on how you set up. Contents, unboxing, getting it charged, connecting the system. And well, that's so much for that for now. In here, you'll probably want to keep this information. This is everything to do with all of the parts and the serial numbers for that, possibly for warranty in the future. Made in Taiwan. Nice touch to see these days. And a couple of little pieces in here. Looks like, is that your chain guide? Yes, it appears to be a chain guide there. So that's for setting all of that up. We might use that later. Your Shimano stuff and your charger. There's your pedals. It does come with a set of pedals on this bike. Keys for moving the battery. And even, because this is a carbon frame bike, carbon prep, which is kind of not exactly a lubricant, but it's something to keep parts from slipping when they're mounted, i.e. the seat post, sometimes the stem, but in this case, well, I don't believe we have carbon fiber stems. And you got a reflector kit. We're going to bypass that. It's not going to do anything to improve your bike. Anyways, let's get started. So, okay, so now moving to the bike, we've got everything in the box here. We're going to start gently taking everything out. I'm going to start with one of the wheels. You'll see the wheel is nicely wrapped and protected. Set up with Maxxis tires, E13 E-Spec rims, and hub. Unwrapping all of these goodies. Oh, you got another reflector there. Personally, that'd be the first thing I get rid of. Doesn't do anything to make the bike faster or nicer. Wheel protectors, just to make sure that you're not going to, oops, look at like that. There's your spacer. It may stick to the inside of the wheel guide, and that goes over your through axle. Done with that one. This looks like it slides out nicely. Oops, there we go. Out with that. Here's your cassette. Your cassette's going to be a 10 to 51 tooth, giving you a massive range of gears for hill climbing for all conditions that you're going to ride under. So you can flatten the hill climbs and chase down the other side as well. And this is going to be a Shimano, I believe a Dior cassette on this one. Yep. And this is a little tough to pull out. You know what? I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to use the axle to knock that out. And some of you purists out there, you're going to notice you got this guard. A lot of you pros probably are going to want to ditch that right away. It's just another thing that makes you look like a beginner, but it comes with the bike. I'm going to leave it on for the display purposes and for the build, because I don't want to just yank it off and break it off. If I'm going to take this off, I'm going to take it off nice and neat. So you got your Minion tires. There's your size. This is going to be your rear, 27.5 Minion DH2. These are the sort of the features of the tire. Nice lightweight casing on it. Tubeless ready, tubeless tire. And like I mentioned about the plasma, you could install that by removing the valve. And this valve stem would be removable so that you can put the liquid in there. Then you put the valve back together and pressurize your bike. So we'll put your rear wheel aside for the moment, or this wheel. Next wheel will be the front wheel. The front wheel is a 29-inch wheel. Oftentimes we refer to this as the mullet setup. So you have the small on the rear, the big on the front. Front's going to roll over the bumps really nice. It's going to give you a faster roll over the bumps, and flatten the bumps even more. And well, just turn that off. We call that the conversation killer. It's great for doing that right in the middle of when you're talking. So we're going to just unwrap this guy. Same procedure on the front. We're going to take the protector off, and making sure that we didn't remove the spacer for the axle. Didn't come off this time. Go to the flip side. We've got another protector on there. We're going to remove that. And again, the spacer remained in place, so we're all good. Done with that. And we got the same matching tire on the front, just in a 29er size. So you'll see the same branding of tire, same sort of setup. There's our wheels. That's using a 12 millimeter through axle on the front. It'll be a 10 millimeter through axle on the rear. Now we get to the fun stuff here. We're getting closer. So again, removing the packaging while making a little mess of my shop here. Make sure there's no hidden goodies in there. All right, down below, what have I found? Intense Tazer. This looks like your battery cover. So we'll put that on later. You've even got your logo on there. There she is. Put that aside. All right, now we're getting close to the beauty. So inside of here is going to be your bike, your handlebars. I'm just going to lay this across the top. Going to take off our little quality control tag. You can see a lot of care was put into building this bike. All the checklists of everything signed by the builder and released, including the day it was built or the day she was born, depending on how you want to look at it. That might be a nice keepsake to keep. We have a dropper seat on here, which is buried all the way to the bottom at this moment. So one of the things you may want to do before you start, on the left side, you're going to have your switch for your dropper, provided I've got the left side. I might have this backwards. Let's figure this out. Here we go. Either way, we're going to figure out which one of these has a dropper switch on it. And again, beautifully packaged. There we are. That says Shimano, so that's definitely not a dropper part. And let's unwrap the rest here. Off with the packaging. All right. As we started, we're exposing the bar now, and we're going to raise that dropper seat. I'm trying to find the dropper switch. I thought it would be attached. And let's look down here, and down here, you're going to find another wire and another switch. And again, beautifully bagged up so it stays nice and safe. And trying to get this elastic off of there. All right, there's our dropper switch. And I'm just going to hit this button. You're going to see our seat's going to rise. Boom. That gives us something to mount it to the repair stand now. I'm going to try to keep this all nice and neat. Move the box on over. So it clamped to the post. I'm just going to lock that at that angle for the moment and carefully raise it out of the box. All right, pretty good. And I'm just going to angle this fork out of the box. Get it all nice and level. And we're a little bit closer to seeing the whole bike. So they made a bit of a clamshell design on here, so we'll just open that up. There we go. There's the Intense logo showing nicely. And we'll just take off all of the goodies off of here. Now we're going to reveal our fork. And I'm going to give you a couple of updates as to what's on this bike. And I'm sure many of you have been anticipating this bike's arrival. This bike is going to be using a full carbon frame. So we got full carbon frame built throughout, carbon rear triangle included in the rear. It's going to be suspended by an Öhlins suspension. So we got an Öhlins coil shock on the back. It gets this bike, the rear end is going to give you 155 millimeters of travel. We got the Öhlins front fork, DH38 M1. It's an air sprung fork, and it's going to give you 170 millimeters travel on the front end. There's your through axle on there. The brakes on this bike are going to be 4-piston Magura brakes. There we have them right there. 2 pistons on each top and bottom. I'll leave the spacer in for now as I'm going through it. Same on the rear. Magura 4-piston brakes on the rear. The drivetrain is going to use an SLX shifter kit. So Shimano SLX. That's going to be a 12-speed. And as I mentioned before, mated with the 1051 cassette on there. Again, if I didn't mention, 12-speed on that. This is where a knife would come in handy. At this moment, I don't seem to have one handy. I'm just going to find the end of the tape. There we go. All right. You'll see that they wrapped this nicely so the chain wouldn't eat the chainstay. And for the moment, I think I can take that off. So we got a couple of little zip ties here. Just going to remove that one. One up here. Remove that one. That's going to allow me to release everything, I hope. I don't want to gouge anything. There we go. Off comes the temporary chainstay protector, crank protector. So as I was talking about the drivetrain, 12-speed Shimano SLX. It's got a clutch in it as well. We'll explain that as we assemble it. E13 crank. There's your chain guide on it. E13 crank set, of course. And these arms are these are E-spec cranks at 165 millimeter. And that's a nice touch. Little guard on there for when you're doing rock plants or hitting anything on the trail. Nice idea. That's a good touch. It gives you a fender in there as well. There's the battery, which has a battery cover that has a Intense logo on it that we removed. And going to the front end as well now. So here's our handlebars. The handlebars in this case are going to be their Intense branded bars, 31.8 millimeter, and that's going to mount to a direct mount stem right on the front there. Nicely sculpted, nice and light, full CNC'd. That's going to be quite a nice addition to the bike. All right. And do I want this in the way right now? I'm going to take this off because it's held on with one zip tie. That'll make life easier for me. You may or may not want to add that number plate on there. It's up to you. And just so I don't possibly scratch something, I want to find the tip of this thing. There we go. Number plates removed. Done with that. All right, now because this bike came with its own toolkit, we're going to follow the directions carefully on this. This is going to be a good lesson for some of you beginner mechanics, and it's also going to give you some professional tech tips. They're going to take your build to the next level so you don't have any mishaps, over torque bolts, strip bolts, any damages like that. There's no excuse for building this bike wrong if you follow the directions. And there will be markings on the bike to show you exactly how to do it and what to do. So I'm going to take you through that now. So one of the first things I like to do at this stage, seeing as these bars are just dangling in the way, I want to put them in a safe place. So let's mount them to the stem. Once again, we got them taped on. And I don't have, oh, there we go. Thought I didn't have the fingernails to pull that off. And it's actually a tube. So we're going to get that out of the way. It's being held down by the display. For style points, I'm going to loosen that screw and take that piece of plastic out of there. That's going to ugly up the bike. Not going to make it look any better. So we're going to start by taking off the stem bolts. So again, with the tool that's provided, there's your 3-way Allen key. We're just going to spin these stem bolts off. Save them, do not lose them. They're going to be very important. And one side comes undone. Now on some of the manuals, they are showing that the stem will have a spaceless top. In other words, it will be flush. In this case, the little arrows aren't showing on this bike, but we're still going to follow the proper directions on setting this one up. The spaceless thing is going to be happening on their stem. It's about torque settings and the torque range of it, and also the proper retention of that handlebar. So I'm just going to hold that in one hand. I'm going to spin this guy off. Same with the bottom one. And now we got our perch there to mount the bar into place. There we go. Now, like all of my videos, I typically don't like to dry fit anything, so I like to put a dab of grease into the bolt holes. So we don't have to fill this with grease. We're just going to put a little tiny nub of grease in there, and it'll probably come off the backside if it's drilled all the way through. You can wipe that off later to make it nice and neat. Gathering the stem clamps and the stem bolts. We're going to raise the bar into position. Now, make note of the cable routing. So, moving things into a nice arc, and we're just going to make sure everything is looking smooth. Now, We got these two. This could be mounted, by the looks of it, straight up like that. I think that's okay, but I'm going to try one little thing that's a bit different. There's a twist here. Actually, no, that's a decent routing, and this is exposed. If you should spin this around, how's that look? No, definitely not good. There's, you got a twist there, and it's going to move to another spot. So again, when you pull it out, before you clamp her down and decide, oh, you don't like the look of it, take a good look at it like it is now. This is going to be your control wire for your motor and the Shimano system. Be very careful not to put that under the stem and clamp the bar on it, thus cutting the wire. That would be tragic. Let's not do that. So I'm just going to hold the bar in there. I'm going to take one of the stem clamps with 2 bolts. These things are pretty much symmetrical. Doesn't matter which way is up or down by the looks of it. So the logo is going to be how you like it to look. For me, I'm going to try this. I'm going to have the logos with a lettering from the bottom outward, or the center out. So this one will be with the eye on the top, and the other one will be with the eye on the bottom and be facing the other direction. I'm going to grab my handy 3-way. I'm going to gently spin these bolts just to retain the bar. And you can see I'm putting no effort into this at all, making sure that that little tiny wire there is not going to get pinched into the stem. And now we got the bar just loosely clamped. I'm going to take the other stem clamp, and for style points, I'm going to put it with the logo that way. You can be the judge of this, whether you like them facing out, facing in, both in the same direction. I don't know. They didn't really specify, and it doesn't really matter. It's going to be a personal choice. Maybe if you have 2 of them, you can make them different, and that'll be the identifier between one bike to the other, shy of the serial number. All right. So I'm looking at the gap on the top and the bottom. This isn't the gapless system like they have on some of the intense bikes. So we're going to have an equidistant gap at the top and the bottom, and we're going to set it up from there. And before I lock these down, I'm going to center it. There's a little intense logo here, and I'm just slightly off to my left over here. So what I'm going to do is just back these off a tiny, tiny bit. I'm going to center the bar just visually. I'm going to set the roll of the bar. So the flats of the bar, the tops of the bar are flat towards the rider, not frowning, not smiling, i.e. there's a frowning bar, there's a smiling bar. I'm going to put it in that neutral position where the tops are flat. Double check again, make sure it's centered. That's good. I'm going to put just a tiny bit of tension, just with my fingertips, because I'm going to the torque wrench next. This is where I was mentioning about taking the build quality of this bike up to the next level. So this isn't just some random torque this and torque that down and hope for the best. We're going to build this under the specifications suggested. And what I'm doing right now, you see me backing off one bolt and tightening the other. What I'm doing is just matching up the gaps here. Style points, really. It is important also on the angle. If you think about it, with the bolts, these things are machined flat, and where the bolt seats, it's also flat. If this is tilted, the bolt will be on somewhat of an angle, and only the edge of the bolt will be tightening on the top and the bottom. All right, so back again to making sure that the bolts are flush. So the distance here will guarantee or assure that the bolts are touching flush to the plate. And as you can see, I'm not tightening, I'm just retaining it. And now I'm going to get out the torque wrench. All right, so now that we've just hand tightened these bolts down, we're going to torque them down. In case you're not sure of the settings I can say are 5 nanometers, but should you be lost, it's right here in the book. This is the Pro build, installing the handlebar. So the manual will give you all the torque settings for all of the parts, including some of the parts that we're not going to take apart. All of the settings are in here. So this being a 5 nanometers, we got a 4mm Allen key, which is going to fit into that hole, into that Allen key bolt there. We're going to set our torque wrench to 4 nanometers. So we move that up, and you'll see the number 4. Actually, we're going to go 5 nanometers, my mistake. So we're at 4, 0. And then we're going to go all the way around till that 0 is back at 1.0. So there we go. So actually that's 1. If I go one more around, I'll be all the way up to 6. So there's 5 nanometers. Making sure I held the setting. I changed it. There we go. She's locked into position. And now we just do a cross pattern, just like when you're doing wheel nuts on a car. So just going to tighten. And there's one click. And go to the other side. Actually, we don't have to do the cross pattern because this is both of these are separate. And we tighten. There's 2 clicks. And we go to the other one. 1 click. 1 click. And then we just go back again and do it one more time. There's a click. We know that's good. So we just do the double click check. There's another one. There's another one. And there's another one. So that click indicates that we've hit 5 Newton meters. Newton meters. Did I say nanometers? All right. Bars are attached. Now we're going to bring this bike up a little bit. While we got this area here, there's a little tiny wire that's going to go to your motor. And as you can see, it's very, very small. And that's going to plug to the back of your display. So I'm going to raise this bike up. And I'm going to have to dig into a box, I think where the charger is, find that little tool. There's a little tool specifically designed for installing that wire. So we're going to raise this up a little bit so we can get it to view. So on the back of the display, you'll have receiving holes for the wiring. And I'm not going to force anything because forcing things often break things. There's an Allen key there, very small one. I'm going to just loosen that one off. I'm not going to use a torque wrench to undo a bolt. Where am I going here? So I'm just going to loosen that so I can rotate the display. There we go. And here's the other thing I was going to do. Remember when I mentioned the plastic was under here? Get rid of that. All right. So there's the empty receiver port for where this wire is going to go. So we're going to go over to the charger box and dig for that wire or that tool. All right. So in our charger box, we had a bunch of little goodies in here. So we got the charger, the keys for it, a couple of pieces of manual that I already pulled out. And here's a baggie with a bunch of plastic pieces, some of which we'll use and some of which we won't. And the one that I was talking about a moment ago, just before we got here, was the installation tool for that little Shimano wire. It's a good thing to use this instead of trying to poke it in by hand. So we're going to route that wire nicely. Try not to cross over any other wires. So we mount this guy just like that. The wire's got a little slit, it's got a little slit in the tool. And you'll see a notch and a notch on the wire right there where that tool will clip into. So that gives you something to push against. And you can just hold that with your thumb carefully. So we're going to go into that hole. So I'm just going to guide it and you're going to hear an audible click. There it is. She's in. Tool pulls away sideways, not back, because you just remove the wire. If you do that, you're going to reinstall it. It's not a hard thing to do. Done. Save that tool. That's going to be in your intense bag. I'm going to put that in your intense tool bag. Now that I've done that, I can just mount move the display back into the position it was originally. And I'm just going to tighten this bolt gently. Torque settings aren't important, but we're not super torquing it. It's a plastic piece. So you can see just with the fingertips, putting a little bit of tension, and that's it. It's not a bad idea to leave it a little bit loose in case you crashed and fell into it. It might be better to leave it just loose enough that under force, maybe not that much force, but under force it would move. But on normal trail vibration, it'll stay in place. I'm just going to add a tiny bit more torque to it. And as you can see, that little tiny bit did a lot. Done. I've got this in my hand now. This is our seat post adjustment or release lever. Seeing as I got it in my hand right now, I'm just going to mount that. It's a stainless steel screw into a very small alloy bolt or receiver. You'll see right on it, just in case you're lost, 1.6 nanometers. Newton meters. I did it again. And that lever will be activated from below, and by the looks of it, because it's below, it's going to go on the left side. So I'm going to just take a couple of chances on routing it. I'm going to go over all of these cables, see how I like that. I find that's a bit intrusive. Let's go under that cable, because remember, you're going to be turning these bars. These bars are going to change angle, and just for style points, I like the way it routes here. That looks good to me. All right, here we go. So thumb lever in that direction. There's also the wire for the motor wire. Try to keep that from being pinched. I'm going to drop that screw in there. And this you can adjust later on for personal position so that it's ergonomically correct, so it feels natural for you to find that switch. Where I put it right now is not important. It does say 1.6 Newton meters, Newton meters. I did it again. I'm going to get this right by the end of the video. And I'm just going to put a tiny bit of torque, just my fingertips. That's it, not much. So our dropper release switch is there. Now we can go to the front wheel. I'm going to raise this thing up again. Up she goes. We're going to mount the front wheel into the bike. I think that's high enough. Front wheel. Here's the front wheel, the rotor, and the brake. And of course the axle. So we need to remove the axle first in order to install it. I'm going to spin that guy off. She'll slide right out. You can see it's all factory pre-lubed already. I'm going to stand that up so it doesn't pick up dust off of our bench. Raise the wheel into position. Well, can't do that yet. We got our brake protectors or brake pucks in here. I'm going to remove both of them. And you may want to save these for a future if you're traveling with the bike or servicing it. If I start pumping on the brakes, I'm going to pump out the pistons. The pistons are going to be close, and you may not be able to install the rotor back into it. And if you keep pumping it, you'll have no space at all, and you'll have to reset the front brake. Not too difficult to do, but just an extraneous job that you don't want to have to do on race day or on the day you're going out. Mounting the wheel, we slide it into the rotor. We put the axle in. As you can see, very little effort. I'm going to just put a little bit of pressure on this so that it goes to the other side. There we go. I'm going to grab my 5mm Allen key, and I'm way far out, so there should be a bit more room to go. There we are. And now I'm just going to spin this down. There it is. Our retaining bolts on the bottom of the fork are still loose, both of them down here. And now I'm going to go back to my torque wrench. So I'm going to change from a 4mm Allen key to a 5mm. I'm going to set this up to 6 Newton meters. Got it right this time. All right, spin that up to 6. Now, some of you gearheads out there and heavy-handed mechanics might think that's not a lot of torque holding on a front wheel. This axle is just in place. It doesn't need to be forced in. What's going to hold it are these pinch bolts down below. So I'm just going to turn this in, and there's 1 click, and we double check, 2 clicks. Done. Now I can remove that Allen key, and the same pressure or same tension is on the front, backing it in, and what do we got here? We got 6. There we go. I'm going to double check that because I'm going just by guesstimation at this moment. It may be actually higher, like closer to 8, almost 10, but we'll check that in the end. There's our 1 click for 6. So we know we got the whole front end set up at 6 Newton meters. Brake's got a bit of rub to it. Should I give it a squeeze and a reset? It hasn't disappeared. So we can set the brake for float. That's a fine-tuning thing we'll do in the end. So essentially you're going to loosen the post bolts back here and center the brake. Many disc brakes are pretty much self-centering. So actually, you know what? Let's do that right now. This will be pretty quick. Looks like a T25. T25 Torx wrench. I'm going to put that in there. And this one was actually a T25. I was correct. So we're just going to loosen those a tiny bit. Brake's going to float from side to side now. Now we just basically squeeze the front brake. That's going to move the pistons out to the center. I'm going to gently tighten each bolt while holding the brake lever. And should everything work out correctly, what will happen is it's centered now to the pistons. When I release, like I just did now, we got a tiny bit of rub. I can look through the frame and I'm seeing the rub is just from a very slight out of trueness of the rotor, but not so much that. I'm just going to loosen this again, float it to one side, silence it. I'm going to call that good enough for now. I think I might have to give the rotor a very slight touch truing. And again, the brakes need to seat themselves. This is a very high quality brake. There should be very, very little in terms of uncenteredness and unsquareness to it. Okay, front wheel's attached. Now we go to the rear wheel. There's a couple of procedures here. One first is to remove the axle. And again, you're going to see how many Newton meters we tighten it to. And it even gives you in inch pounds. 11 Newton meters is the level that we tighten it to. We're going to undo this axle, not with a Torx driver, with an Allen key. I'm assuming it's a 6. Yes, it's a 6. Just going to spin that out. And actually, I may have gotten ahead of myself on this one. I did. All right, so this is a step you don't need to do right away. I'm just going to put this back in to start where I sort of jumped ahead of myself. All right, so the gold piece that I undid retains the hanger for the derailleur, which is a replaceable component. Should you need this or break this part could be ordered in the event of a bad crash. Now to remove the axle, we're going to come off of this side, and in this case, it's a 5 mil. We're going to spin the axle out. There's our 10 millimeter axle. It's nice and clean, has a little bit of lubricant on it. I'm going to stand that up on its end so it doesn't collect dirt and dust. And we're going to mount the derailleur now. Mounting the derailleur, you're going to see something that's in. So here's your threaded bolt that's going to go into the hanger. On this threaded bolt is also the pivot that pushes against here. So you're going to see, I'm not sure if the camera is going to show this. See how I'm moving this part? So that part needs to be touching that screw, and this side of it needs to be touching on this flat part of this platform here. So that's the way that's got to be set up. So when you're putting this on, you're going to make sure, and you may want to bring the camera on this side. So I'm going to hold this with my fingertip. I want to make sure this stays on the back side of this little flat portion of the hanger. I'm going to tighten this down with a 5 millimeter. So I'm just going to adjust it into place. So that's in where it's supposed to be. We torque that down, and I'm just going to hold that into position. You got a little bit of motion here. That's normal. It's part of the derailleur spring. All right, so what we're going to do, this derailleur has a clutch to resist chain slap. I'm just going to move this lever over, give the derailleur more motion. It's when I'm going to hook up the cassette to it. And remember, when I started, I left that little safety guard on. So to save me some grief, I'm going to use the axle to knock that off because I didn't want to pry at it. So there's our little plastic guard. It's not holding anything as a spacer. You can see the spacers there. I'm going to put this axle in the ready mode, nice and neat. Well, once again, the brake pucks or spacers. Put those aside. Those are going to be in your toolkit. You may need those also for future service. So I'm going to hook the derailleur, hook the chain up to the smallest cog. I'm going to raise this into position. I'm going to guide the rotor into the brake. While holding it, I'm going to grab my axle. I'm going to pass it through the frame, pass it through the hub. It's all the way to the other side now. I'm gently going to tighten it down with a 5mm Allen key. And reading the number off the side for the torque. Let me get that all the way in first. The torque setting on this is 11 Newton meters. Newton meters, got it right this time. You guys are gonna have fun with this video. Now let's go to that torque wrench. 5mm Allen key mounted to the torque wrench. I'm gonna set the torque wrench to 11 Newton meters. So there's the 10, there's the 0. And to make it 11, I'm gonna turn this to 1.0. So that gives me the 9. Now I can insert the tool and I'm gonna tighten until, oh, I didn't get the click I wanted. I'm going to back off. I think the tool, I didn't have it locked in the setting. So I'm just going to back that off. Anytime you're uncertain, just redo what you did. Making sure that it's 11. There we go. Insert the tool. There's the click that I want, and we want to get 2 clicks. Second click, good to go. On the flip side, this was also 11 Newton meters, and I took that off by hand earlier. That was the part that was holding on the hanger, and that's a 6mm, is it? Yes, it is. I'm going to go to a 6mm Allen key right there. That's also in your toolkit. There's your 6, fits correctly. We know this is 11 from before. Putting this in, tighten it down. 1 click, 2 clicks. We know it's good now. Now we got the rear wheel mounted. We're pretty close to done here. I can spin this around. Brake seems to be free of rub. We can check our gears. It's in number 12 in 12th gear. 1 click should give me 1 shift. There it is, 1 shift. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, I miscounted there because 1 was where I started, so 12. Now, one thing I like to do on any bike, doesn't matter what bike it is, I want to check for overshift. So I'm going to put my hand on the derailleur, put my thumb on the knee of the derailleur. I'm going to try to force it past and try to see if it'll shift past the low gear. And as you can see with the force I'm putting, it doesn't want to do it. So we know that the derailleur isn't going to overshift. And here we go, we're going to go back and again. So we're in 1 and I'm going to count backwards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Bingo. We can put the clutch back on if we want. That's just going to reduce the chain from slapping. That's when you're riding it on the trail, being aggressive, hitting the bumps, that wheel's going up and down, chain's trying to make all kinds of action happen. Done. Easy part for you now, put the pedals on. So the pedals are in the bag. Some of you may be riding clipless. They didn't go super high end on the pedal, but they didn't exactly cheese out either. So we do have a polycarbonate pedal, keeping the bike light. Feels like we got somewhat of a sealed bearing in there. Nice looking axle. And like I always do with dry fitting, I don't like to dry fit parts. So I'm going to put a little dab of grease in the crank and a little bit on the other side too. And you know, that's what that looks like. So if you don't see it in the camera, not important. I saw that, I heard that thing fall. There is a little tiny washer that's in the crank arm, and that's just to keep the pedal from gouging out the aluminum on the arm. So I'm going to put that washer back into its seating. Very simple. And it just goes in there. You'll see another one on the right side. I can probably take it out with my fingernail maybe. I didn't want to fall out easy, but that's the one. Just make sure that they're still in place. Pedals are left and right hand thread. They might be marked that way. So here we go. We see CR for chromoly, left pedal. The other one's the right. There we go. There's a right on there. We could spin that guy down clockwise for the right, counterclockwise for the left. And I'm going to use the one tool that they didn't give you in the toolkit is a pedal wrench. Mind you, it can be done with an Allen key. So from the back side of the pedal, where's my pedal? From the back side of the pedal, you'll see an Allen key hole. That looks like an 8mm Allen key. So you can tighten it down with that. I'm kind of a classic builder. Pedal wrench is always my first go-to tool when I'm putting pedals on. So I'm just going to mount it, spin her backwards, torque it down. I believe the pedal torque on this is 34 Newton meters. And any of you bike shop mechanics out there, you pretty much have installed cranks pedals where you just torque it down pretty much as much force as you can put through an 11-inch handle, unless you're a huge gorilla and you can rip threads out. Let's say not a gentle type. So I'm going to mount that on, pedal out backwards. I got resistance, torquing it down. We can do the fine torquing later. Here's a piece of tape we don't need. It's also showing you more torque settings for the pinch bolts on the crank. So the crank's going to fit on, tighten down with the retention nut on the outside. So that'll retain it to the axle. And then you'll tighten the pinch bolts to hold the crank on to the axle. That's already been done at the factory. I have faith in this company of doing it right, especially with the great little checklist that they had on it. And if in doubt, always go back and check it yourself. Pedals are on. This bike is pretty much rideable at this stage. So then some of the features on this bike, I mentioned the SLX 12-speed drivetrain, rapid fire type shifter on it, Magura brakes with full hydraulic brake levers. We've got our dropper seat post release mechanism. The display we'll get to later when we fire this thing up. There's our selector on the display for changing some of the modes of the motor. Forks we already outlined. It is an air fork Olin, so down below here, I believe it's going to be below, are going to be where, yep, underneath these caps, you'll see the valve cap, and that will allow you to pressurize the fork. We're not going to get into setting up sag on a full suspension bike. There are other videos out there. One rule typically on long travel, you want up as much as 30% sag to give you, a nice plush ride. For riders on more cross-country, more aggressive terrain, you may want to bring it down to as little as 20 so the bike feels stiffer, less float. It's a personal choice, and you want the bike to be balanced. On the other side of the leg here, when I get to this side, I'm just double checking here. Okay, this is going to be our adjustment. So you're going to see here fast and slow stickers on the back, and this is going to adjust the rebound or compression. Again, this is kind of new to me at this point. First time I've seen this one, but this one is going to be how you adjust the speed of how the fork travels. And on the top, you got more adjustments. So you've got your main air. Oh, it looks like you got a top and bottom. So this is going to be a dual air chamber. So you got a negative spring and a positive spring in this one. Here you go. So this I'm assuming is going to be your positive spring building up the chamber, and the other valve down below is for the negative spring. That's going to be for pretty much setting it up so that when it bottoms out, it gives a softer bottom out on it. We're just going to do that for now. There's another adjustment on the top. We're going to get into suspension setups later. There's also adjustments all over the rear shock, compression and rebound adjustment. And it's not an air fork, it's a Springer. So the only adjustment you might have is going to be the threaded collar that you can preload the spring. Usually leave it within the settings. If you're a really heavy rider and you feel that you have to turn it numerous times, the smartest thing to do is to replace the spring for something that's going to suit a heavier rider. The air fork is almost infinite in adjustment, but the rear end, if you are super heavy, you may want to change that out. All right. And the other detail, the most important thing, the motor on this bike, and I got to go to my cheat sheet here for a moment. It's a Shimano Steps motor. This one happens to be the EP800 drive unit. So that's what's the motor is going to be. So that's going to be your mid-drive motor, giving you your assistance for pedaling. So again, this is not like a regular e-bike where it's all throttled. As a matter of fact, there is no throttle on this. You got to pedal this bike to make it go. And with that, the motor is going to assist you at multiple levels that you can set. It's a very natural feel. It's going to be a very high performance sort of ride. And this is definitely a peddler's performance ride bike. So the guy who's like myself at one point when I was in much better shape than I am, and I was flattening hills and I had no problem going out all day long. Now I'm sort of trailing on those hills. It's a little bit of a, a heart stopper going up it. So it's nice to have some assistance. Once I crest the top, I can rip down the other side, and I can put all my other skills back into play on the descent side. But I got this thing helping me get on the other side where I may not have so much strength as I used to. So I think that pretty much concludes the build. In terms of the build of the bike, there it is. Now to charge it, this is going to be our charger. The charging port, where have they hidden it on this one? It's going to be on the side of the battery. The battery is removable, so there is a release strap on it, which will require a key to remove. At this stage, right now, I'm just going to show you that we would just take this charger, we would plug it in to the side. It can be charged when it's on the bike. You'll plug the charger into a wall and it will go through the modes of charging. And when it's fully charged, she's ready to go. There's probably a little bit of charge or residual charge on the battery right now. They never ship out a battery that's fully dead because that's not good to do. And Shimano, we know, never makes a mistake. Removing the battery just for fun, we'll do that. It'll be the first time for me too on this bike. So we have the key port here, and we got a, what did they say? Battery strap. No, it's pretty straightforward. So we're going to put the key inside. There we go. We're going to turn it. You see the battery already wants to release. We'll carefully take this out so we don't drop it on the floor. There's your battery. There's virtually no charge on the battery. It's got a very tiny residual charge. As you can see, it's flashing. We hooked it up to the battery charger. The battery charger will wake up this battery, so it brings it to life. When it sits for a long time, it's going to shut down and it won't turn itself on until either, I'm going to guess, the A, you hit this button when it's ready, or B, you put the charger on and that sort of wakes up the battery. So now that the battery is awake and it's got a tiny little charge on it, and we can see the charging light is indicating that it's giving a charge, that's going to change color when it's fully charged, and of course this bar will be fully lit across the top. We're not going to wait for this thing to charge for this video. Or maybe we'll come back to it later and show that everything's all set up, because we may want to just demonstrate the function of the controls and the display, but we won't be able to do that with the battery at this level of charge. So I'm just going to take the charger off. I'm going to put the plug back on, and mounting the battery is something you're going to need to know too. So we're just going to pretend that this is fully charged, and we had that battery strap. What did I do with, there it is. So the battery strap is just something that's going to protect the battery and give you something to hold on to, so when you pull it out, it's just not going to fling out and land on the ground. Shimano thought of a couple of things on that, which was quite nice. So I'm just going to put that strap on. The battery will mount to the bottom first onto the receiver ports. The key, I'll get it out of the way so that doesn't cause any harm. And matter of fact, from underneath here, you're going to see where this battery button is, and that's going to be through a little window down here. And from the inside, you'll see it's sealed so that dirt doesn't get inside and water doesn't get inside there. And that'll allow you to set up the battery and also to see what level of charge is at. So we're going to rotate this in. That was really easy. There we go. The click is going to indicate, and I guess I've left it unlocked. Nope. All right. So I gave it an extra tug. You saw it came out, and then I pushed it back in with a little bit more force. It clicked in. Now the battery's locked in. It's only going to come out with the key now, which is right here. Assuming that that was all set and ready to go, we can now put our battery cover on. So we got our Intense and Blazing battery cover. We're going to put it down into the bottom, gently wiggle it into place, and it's got a little sort of snapper on the top. Bingo, we're in. Removing it, push down, pull out, out she goes. Now she's all covered. We can't demonstrate the motor in operation right now with virtually no battery power. So this is going to pretty much conclude the actual assembly and mechanical build of the bike, of all the details we've done. I haven't pumped up the tires. That you can do yourself. Pick your own tire pressure. All right, so this will conclude the mechanical build of this bike. We may do a little add-on a little bit later on the display and the functions of the display, but as of yet, it is now a rideable bicycle. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Visit us on epiccycles.ca. You'll find this bike and other models like it on our website, and we look forward to seeing you and visiting you, and have a great day.